Hello, and welcome to another episode of Burning Books Truths. And in this episode again, we're reading from Hunter S. Thompson still. I'll probably change the book next time, I think, just because this will be the fourth episode I've done on the Hunter S. Thompson extract. So, what this is, I read an extract from a book, usually a chapter or a piece, and then usually with some amusing accents as well, generally, so it's not completely dry. And then give some thoughts afterwards on what I've just read, and I go into it cold, so I've not read it before. So, this is reading from Hunter S. Thompson, Generation of Swine, Tales of Shame and Degradation in the 80s. I'm on page... I want to skip ahead a bit actually because this is extracts, so it's page 149 down to A Sunless Sea. There are news reports out of Alaska about rampant alcohol abuse on the North Slope. Where will it end? First there's crack on Wall Street. Now we have whole villages full of Eskimos turning their backs on the outside world and holding up by themselves to drink whiskey for weeks at a time. Nobody knows how to cope with it. The price of oil has fallen so low that the Eskimos no longer have money, so they're retreating into booze. 5 or 6 of them will load a whole pickup truck with cheap whiskey and go off to some shack on the far end of a remote ice floe and get hopelessly, savagely drunk. This is a new development in the Klondike, or at least it is just getting noticed. Nancy Reagan has not gone after the drunkards yet, and there will probably not be enough time for it. The war on booze ended 55 years ago with the repeal of the Volstead Act. Whiskey is legal now, and the era of prohibition is viewed by most historians as a wrong and unfortunate experiment. But things are different now. This time the war is on drugs, and as the Reagan era winds down, it's taking on all the trappings of a holy war. On Sunday, the President and his wife will make an unprecedented joint TV appearance from the White House for the purpose of ridding the nation of drugs. It will be an extremely major statement, according to presidential spokesman Larry Speaks, perhaps the heaviest thing since John F. Kennedy's grim speech on the Cuban Missile Crisis. Well, maybe so. We can only wait and see. They've been trying to shut down the opium dens in Singapore for 3,000 years. Every government since the Chang dynasty has sworn to crush the opium trade, but nobody has ever made a dent in it. The price of opium is relatively the same today as it was in the year 900 BC. Kingdoms fall, empires crumble, powerful nations come and go, but the opium market remains as stable as rice or gold. Nobody questions it. Nobody asks why. It is a crop that grows every year in half the known world, and a lot of people want it. They like opium. They enjoy smoking it and floating happily into a dream world. That's a hard habit to argue with. It is an acquired taste, they say, and I've never had much luck with it. There's a lot of ritual involved, and you're always dealing with foreigners who may or may not take care of you once the dragon begins to sing. You want to have a lot of disposable income and plenty of free time on your hands before embracing a serious opium habit. It's not a productive drug, as a rule. But some of the expectations have been spectacular. The poet Samuel Coleridge was one. He got into opium for a few years and wallowed crazily in the behavioural sink. But while he was down there, he also wrote the Rime of the Ancient Mariner and Kubla Khan. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree, where Alf the sacred river ran, through caverns measureless to man, down to a sunless sea. How's that for a lead, Jack? Yeah, a lot of sober people will move instinctively to the back of the bus to make room for whatever dope fiend wrote that one. Ronald Reagan could live another 200 years and never even dream lines like that. There are some jobs you can't hire out. If George Bush could find a speechwriter who would write like Sam Coleridge, he would hire him immediately and never mind his bad habits. On the fast tracks where you run without brakes, all of God's creatures are welcome. Nobody ever asked Jen MacArthur how he came up with that old soldiers never die speech. Yet it ranks to the highest ravings of Coleridge and Poe, and whether King Hell Loon wrote the Book of Revelation. Perhaps they were all opium eaters. Who knows? An essential benign drug for those who can properly afford it, and for the others it will always pose certain legal risks and career problems. Opium was big in the Orient before the invention of the wheel. It has traditionally been an embarrassment to the business community and a foul stain on the social fabric. But so what? All they do is lie down and smoke. They become giddy and useless, but never violent or dangerous. And it wasn't a gang of opium fiends who bombed Pearl Harbor and burrowed like crazy moles into caves in Iwo Jima, killing 2,000 Americans and countless millions of their own kind. No, those were the sober people, the smart crowd. They were Japan's best and brightest. There were no pictures of Tojo lying around on a bamboo mat with an opium pipe on his lips. He was too busy for that kind of foolishness. There were bombs to be dropped and throats to be slit. There was a whole world out there to be conquered. They had no time for opium. Whatever style of logic may have prevailed in the corridors of the Japanese War Ministry in those years, it's never really been totally explained, but it's never been linked to drugs, like the Nazis, or to any other cheap vice. There was a need for oil and a lust for power, and 10,000 people calling you sir and chanting your name like a prayer every time you went out in public. They all wanted to be on the team. It was like doing a Super Bowl shuffle, along with the fridge and the rest of the boys. Dumb, but it worked. And it was not smart in those days to argue with anything powerful enough to crush Spain, China and France in less than it took to age a good bottle of wine. Dope fiends have always been with us, and they're always guilty of many things. But a compulsion to rule the world has rarely been one of them. Powermongers are early risers, opium eaters sleep late. Tojo woke up with the sun, and Hitler was so paranoid that he never slept at all. The Reagans have a style all of their own. They say they sleep well at night. They are both utterly convinced that all drug dealers should be put to death by flogging. Not everybody agrees, but the train is leaving the station, and everybody from Tip O'Neill to Sonny Bono and Suhan Sohan is scrambling to get aboard. The fat is in the fire. Very impressed with that, actually. That's one of the, I think that's probably, if not my favourite, it's up there. That's one of my favourite extracts in the 4 that I've done from that book. It's kind of got a nice lyricism to it. I love the extract of poetry, but then also the way he compares so-called, I guess, conventional bourgeois existence, if you like, with the kind of life of a drug-addled drug addict, but who basically just does nothing all day. But then he makes that interesting comparison about how, you know, opium addicts might be opium addicts, but they're not. They haven't got a desire for power or power over others. It's quite an interesting thought, I suppose. And obviously, it's kind of a personal interest to me because I'm really interested in the war on drugs and what that means and how drugs in general affect our culture. It's something I've been interested in for a long time, from Howard Marks, reading dope stories when I was about 18. I've experimented with drugs. I'm not going to go into it because I'm on a YouTube channel, but I have my experience with drugs, and as I think most people do. And my personal opinion is this, as always, a mixed bag. You can't say good or bad. They're not good or bad. They just are what they are. But yeah, there's an interesting article, I think, extract, a piece of prose, and I really enjoyed that. And it's really interesting how much you can cram into linking historical figures, history, and I've really enjoyed reading this book. I've not finished it yet, but I'll continue to read it, I think, in my own time. I think for the next book I'll move on to something which is slightly different, probably. So watch out for that. This has been an episode of Burning Book Truths. I've been Chris, Icon Vertex. I hope you enjoyed that.